The Grandy Man Ken. That's right. Today, episode 52 of Chris and Company, we will be joined by MLB great Curtis Granderson. You've seen him. You remember him. He's been all over the place. He's been on MLB Network. You remember him with the Tigers, remember with the Yankees, Mets, what have you. Really looking forward to having a conversation with him, recapping what was a really remarkable career and continues to be a very remarkable career. But before we get to the interview, I want to get into these shows a little bit quickly. CastellaniContent.com. You'll find everything that we have to offer there. You can find this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube as well if you want to look at the video feed. Really important. One thing I saw, I think 54% of the people that are watching on YouTube are not subscribed. So that's real quick. Just hit that subscribe button. That way you can get notified of everything that Austin and I create as we continue to pump out content. Follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014. I don't want to keep you guys waiting, and I sure as heck don't want to keep Curtis Granderson waiting. Oy vey, what a bad look that would be for me. So let's just jump right into it. Here is our interview with former MLB All-Star, Silver Slugger winner, Detroit Tigers great, member of the 06 magical team, Curtis Granderson. Chris Company, episode 52, and we are joined by, seeming based on the people I've told who I'm interviewing you, everyone's favorite Tiger. I mean, this is one of the greats, Tiger great, Yankee great, Mets great, Major League Baseball great, former All-Star, Silver Slugger, one of the last gentlemen to hit 20 triples in a season. We will talk about that. Curtis Granderson joins the show today. Curtis, how are you? It's great to meet you.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there, man. Obviously got a lot prepped for this interview here. But before we kind of take a deep dive into your career, I know you're a big WWE fan. Were you all over WrestleMania last weekend?
You know, it's so crazy. Like, as I've gotten older, as much as I still love it, it's hard for me to watch and sit and stay for lengths of time just because the schedule's just busy. Yeah. And part of that started while playing. You know, we'd have games on Sunday, which SummerSlam or, WrestleMania or all those different things were happening. So I would miss, unfortunately, have to play catch up. The good thing, though, with social, I can keep up with stories and the feeds because they do a really good job of at least letting you know some of the stuff that's happening. So I didn't sit down and watch from start to finish on both nights, but kind of have a little gist of what's happening and what's going on, but nowhere near as in-depth as I used to be just because of timing and other commitments. That's all.
No, I understand. That is kind of the beauty of social media is you can kind of follow along even when you're not following along to a certain extent. Right. But, I think obviously I think the decor probably gives it away, but huge Detroit fan here, huge Tiger fan here. And so I'll start, kind of going back to, almost 20 years ago now. Let's talk about the 06 Tigers here just for a quick second. And obviously a team that is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. And for my generation, really the first exposure that we had to competitive baseball in, the state of Michigan. I mean, the team hadn't made the playoffs in 19 years. And typically, when you hear from certain players about teams that had special runs, they talk about, hey, we knew in spring training that this team could be something. We knew in, early on in the campaign. But we're talking about a team that was 3 years removed from a 119 loss campaign, and so with a first year manager, obviously established manager in Jim Leyland, but a first year manager nonetheless. I guess that team got off to such a crazy hot start. Was there a specific moment in your mind when you felt like, man, this team we could probably surprise some people this year?
It's interesting because you mentioned like spring training. I don't think any of us thought a ton at that point. Obviously excited, optimistic, just like the other 30 ball clubs. But like you said, the history was what it was. That's what was staring us in the face. I think the year before we might have finished close to 500. I think like if we would have won our last game or two, I think we almost finished at 500 under Trammell's last season there. And then going into 06, there's a lot of us that don't know if we're making the team. Some of us do make the team for the first time. Verlander, myself, Marcus Thames. That's the first time we had made the team out of spring training. So we're excited about that. Yeah. Then we play well and then get started. But I remember early on, even though we were playing great, and I think at one point we had the best record in
Yep.
all of baseball, minor leagues, everything.
Hmm.
And there was still like, well, you haven't beat the Yankees, you haven't beat the Red Sox. So until we had those series, that's when it finally started to get other people to think, okay, all right, this could be legit, this could be real. Let's see what they can actually do. But also keep in mind, remember, we limped in at the end. All we
Right.
had to do is beat Kansas City, who was in last place in the Central, just 1 out of 3 games, and we end up getting swept. And next thing you know, we go from hosting first round playoff game to now we're the wild card team on the road in Yankee Stadium, and then there goes any possible belief on the outside that we have a shot. Like, okay, that was fun while it lasted. It's going to be done and over with, and then we do what we do against the Yankees, which was crazy. And I think part of it is a little bit of karma's not the right word, but that was some of it. So I don't know how much you're aware or your audience may know about this. So if you remember, we play game 1.
Yeah.
Nate Robertson starts that game. Good game, but we end up losing that game. I think Jeter has 5 hits.
I think he went 5 for 5. I think in that first
it's like
game,
killing us, doing all that. But then the second game gets rain delayed and gets pushed to the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the potential karma starts to set in. So remember, that's supposed to be a night game. Now all of a sudden there's a little bit of rain in the forecast, all this stuff. And we're sitting in the locker room, cages, weight rooms, training rooms, doing all that stuff because they keep saying, hey, we might play in 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, etc. Now, I remember talking to some of the Yankees that were on that team because remember, a few years later, I get traded to the Yankees.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was like, man, that stunk that night. We were there all night waiting for it, and they finally canceled the game. He goes, you were there all night. They told us at 6 or 7 o'clock that game was going to get canceled. So they were home while we're sitting there in the locker room thinking we're going to play, and we don't. So now this is where I think the karma side starts to come back. We go from a night game, now we're a scheduled day game because we got to get the game in for the playoffs. And then here comes a young Verlander and a young Zumaya throwing 100 in the shadows, and none of those Yankee players could see anything. And next thing you know, we split that series in New York, and then we come home and beat them for the rest of it. But it was interesting, just that whole season unfolding and then getting to that situation and obviously getting to the World Series.
That's such a great story. I mean, that's why you don't mess with the baseball gods, man, because not only did you have that going for game 2, but then you have a former Yankee on the mound in game 3 against Randy Johnson pitching. I'd call it the game of his life, but he did that about 2 more times in that postseason. Yeah. I mean, that's how dominant he was, and he got ran out of town when he was in the Bronx. So yeah, that was actually. I'm glad you mentioned it, but it was an overwhelmingly successful regular season. But as you mentioned, you kind of stumble down the stretch and you cough up the division. You have to go to the Bronx to play the Yankees. What was the vibe at that point, entering the postseason? Was there a level of disappointment, or as a whole, did you guys think like, man, this has been a wildly successful season. Let's roll the dice and let's see what we got?
I would say the craziest part about it, 162 games and the postseason, probably the most pressure at any point in time in the season were those last 3 games of the regular season. When they say all you got to do is win 1, you go, all right. And then sure enough, we're down early in the first game. Okay, we'll come back, and we can't. We'll get them tomorrow. Okay, now we've lost 2 in a row. And then if you remember, Torrey Hunter of the Twins said something like, hey, Kansas City, if you do this, I'll get you wine or champagne. And obviously they win, and he does it, and then MLB kind of says, hey, that's kind of like betting and tampering and this, that, and the other. He kind of got in trouble a little bit, but I thought it was all fair. Like, it wasn't like they were trying to do anything to help him. But, of course, the Twins now win the division. And then they end up, I'm not sure I forgot who they played in the first round.
They played Oakland.
They played Oakland. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So they end up winning they win the division, and then they play Oakland and unfortunately lose to them. But I think that pressure of those first 3 games, or those last 3 games of the season, was the biggest part of the season. Now we have, I think it's going into game 3. The messaging has now changed and go, okay, we're going to play in Comerica versus, hey, bring your bags just in case. So now there's all that adding in. Now we lose. Okay, the bus is at this time. We're flying at this time. We're going to New York. And now we got to play. And it's like, all right, what just happened? And like I said, I just remember the first game, Jeter getting 5 hits, and I go, "Dang, that's why they call him Mr. October." Now I've seen it. This isn't going to be easy. And then all of a sudden, it flipped. And I remember my dad came to that series, and he's there for that second game, and I got a triple off Mike
Yeah.
Mussina. And I remember him saying, because that's the quietest I've ever seen Yankee Stadium. Because I think either we tied it or we had taken the lead at that point, and then obviously Verlander and Zumaya came and did their thing. But I think at that point, now we come back to Detroit, and I didn't know much about like how home field advantage really could matter.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, 19 years of missing playoffs. Now you get it. Now we're back. The series is even. And I think the fans got energized by it, like, oh, we got a shot. Like if we come back and we're down 2 games to none, it might have been a slightly different thing, but they came in and then Kenny Rogers is throwing pitches and diving after balls that he has no chance on that are routine double play balls. And he's throwing as hard as he's thrown all season long. And all that stuff is adding to it. And I just think just a combination of all that stuff brought pressure, but quickly took it away just like that.
That was one of the great weekends I think that the state has ever had in sports, because it was you guys beating the Yankees in the ALDS. And that was the year, now it's happened since, but that was the year where it was the first time that Michigan and Ohio State were both undefeated going into that last game, and Michigan State were playing each other in October. It was kind of viewed as this is Michigan's last hurdle. If they win this game, they'll probably be undefeated. So that was on the Saturday you guys knocked out the Yankees. So obviously, core memories at this point. Man, I was in 5th grade, but I remember it very well. Now, I brought up at the beginning, in 2007, you hit 23 triples. And kind of ironic is that same season, Jimmy Rollins winning the National League MVP on the last day of the season hits his 20th triple. You guys are the last two to do it. In fact, in the last decade, nobody's had more than 14. And as weird as it sounds, I think the game has changed so much. We value power more than we ever have. And to a point where, I mean, to say triples are obsolete is a weird way to put it, but I think that just like triples are now home runs in a lot of ways with certain players. Do you think that we see 20 triples again in a season at some point in the future?
I think it's going to be tough. Even thinking back to that '07 season, there were 2 amazing seasons that also, well, more than that, on our team. We had Maglio and Polanco, each with 200 hits. I think Maglio wins the batting title, and Polanco finishes second or third or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I batted 300. I think Pudge batted 300. It was just a great offensive season. And I remember a lot of the balls that Maglio would hit. I mean, he had like 50 doubles or something crazy like that. I'm like, that could have been a triple. That could have been a triple. But he just coasted in the second, coasted in the second,
Mm-hmm.
coasted in the second. Now, I think those types of players are still going to exist. So there's balls that could be triples. They're just not going to turn them into triples. So I think that hurts the chances. I do also think that one thing that was fortunate for me is Comerica is a big ballpark. I had power, but I wasn't a power hitter. So even if I hit no doubters, I didn't know because it's a big ballpark. So I got out of the box hard, and that all started back in college where my college coaches said, think double out of the box, think double out of the box. So sure enough, there would be balls where you're like, okay, that's a homer, and I'm almost at second, and then the umpires would do this, and I'd slow down. And that's what helped me to get so many triples. Plus, I had Gene Lamont at third. Only time I went is if he told me to come. So when his big arms are waving and stuff like that, I started going, and I never got thrown out at third that year on any of those potential triples. So then, obviously Jimmy does it on the last game of the season in a smaller ballpark in Citizens Bank.
Yeah.
And, him and I have talked about it, just how cool and exciting it was to do it. And I've spoken to some other players, some that are active, some that still play, like Akil Baddoo. And he's like, man, I'm going to come in and I'm going to break the triples record with the Tigers. And then I looked up and saw what the number was. And I was like, he got 23. Like, how does that happen? And I said, man, I was just fortunate. And I think there were also elements of the game that slightly don't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. The corner outfielders then weren't necessarily burners. They were a little bit bigger. Like as mentioned, Maglio was coming off a knee injury. He was my right fielder. I remember Andy Van Slyke kind of giving me the bad news bears thing. He goes, anything you can get to in outfield, get to it.
Yeah.
because we have guys with bad knees and bad hips and all that stuff out there. So those big corner outfielders, there's fewer of them now, and they can tend to get to the ball a little bit better. The analytics show where they should better be playing, because it was interesting how many times they would play me not to, like, kind of off base, I think. They would play the gaps a little bit on me, which obviously I was a gap guy. But if I could beat the first baseman, which again, there were a lot of big first basemen in Comerica, they would just roll around that corner. That's the furthest throw you have to make. And I was out of the box hard. So that's what helped me out to do what I did on that side of it. But I'm hoping we can start to at least get to 10 or 15, because it is exciting. And as much as we do value power and we love to see it, like, we're still not seeing multiple guys hit 40. We're not seeing tons of guys hit 30. So you still have the 10, 15, 20 homer guys. And those are the ones that can get the 15, possibly 20 triples, because they're going to crush some balls that just aren't going to get out. And those are the ones you got to take advantage of.
And I think I've had this theory for a minute where I think that the new rules allow for speed to be making a comeback, and that's not just with stolen bases. Like, I think that with the way that teams are drafting certain players, I think they're taking that stuff into account. And there's a few guys, like, I think, having been to that park in Arizona, like, I think Corbin Carroll probably has the ability and the speed to do that, but he's also got crazy pop. Like, those triples end up being home runs. I remember I got into I was in the layup line for my 8th grade basketball team back in 2010, and all of us got into an argument because it was the day that you had been traded to the Yankees, and which still to this day is a very hotly talked about thing. I mean, we'll be talking about like the last 5 years of Tiger baseball, and people will be like, "Yeah, I'm still mad they traded Granderson." Where were you, and how did you find out that had happened?
I was furniture shopping. I was trying to buy some furniture for my house in Chicago, and I don't know what happened, but I left my phone in the car, which you think about, like, how'd you do that, right? But I did. I don't know why. For some reason I did. So I'm in there looking for...
It was a different time. It was a different time. Yeah.
So I'm looking for... I don't even know what piece of furniture it was. It might have been a couch, might have been a table, something. Or a light. I think it was actually a light. So I get back to the car, and there's like just a ton of messages. I thought something was wrong, because all it said was, so many unread messages or so many messages. I'm like, all right, so I'm flipping through, and all the questions, it's like a lot of these questions, like, is it true? Is it happening? Sad to see you go. I'm like, what's going on? So then I get home, and at that time, the ticker's going across the bottom line, and it's saying proposed trade or rumored or whatever the case it might be. But at this point, Dave Dombrowski hasn't called me. Brian Cashman hasn't called me. My agent hasn't called me. So I'm taking it as this didn't really just happen. And the crazy part about it is, this is now 2009. I signed my extension in 2007. Right. I thought I was going to be a Tiger for life. I had been rumored in trades before that never happened. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let it get to me like I thought it might have, before. Because there was one rumor where I think Joel Zumaya and I were rumored to get traded to the Braves in our first or second year, and it never happened. So I got worked up by it. I was like, all right, unless something happens, control what I can control. So as no one's telling me things, I have an extension. I'm loving playing in Detroit. It's close enough to my home in Chicago, but far enough to keep people away, where if I need a little space, I can. And I'm living in Royal Oak at the time, which I was loving, in a brand new building. I think it's 5th on Main Street or something, or just off of Main Street. So I'm ready to come and buy a place. Like, this is going to be my second home. I'm going to do that. I'm there for 6, hopefully 7 months out of the regular season. Plus my foundation is starting in Detroit. I'm going to be there a lot of times. And then all this happens. I was like, oh, what happened? And not only that, I'm getting traded to the Yankees. And I say that because I feel like I was very fortunate being in Detroit that I was able to do what I wanted to do without really being bothered too much. Like, there were a lot of Tiger fans everywhere, whether it was at the grocery store, the restaurant, whatever. And they'd come say hi and do this, that, and the other. But there was this whole page 6 thing with the New York Yankees, where you're seen here and they're taking pictures of you there and they're doing all this stuff and the media's grabbing it. And if there's any sort of compromising story or position, they're going to run with it. And sure enough, my first week with the Yankees, Jabba Chamberlain and I go out, and someone grabbed it and said, Jabba and Grandy out and about, saw Grandy drinking water. I was like, whew, at least they saw me
Yeah.
drinking water, you know?
Yeah.
And then they posted my address like the next week. So it was those differences that I was nervous about going to New York versus what I had been accustomed to in Detroit. And it took a little bit of time to get used to. And it was part of that why I was like more nervous than anything. Like, of course you want to play with a great organization, but I loved Detroit. I mean, Detroit was great. And I still tell everybody to this day when they ask me what was my favorite organization, it was Detroit. Because that's where it started. That's where I got drafted, my first World Series. That's where I made my roots. Like, that'll always be a special place for me.
Were you hurt at the time?
I was still processing it. I remember when I did, so that happened, call it December winter meetings, give or take. So
Yeah.
beginning of December. So I still was processing, still trying to figure out. And then like later that night, I finally get the calls from all three people, both GMs and my agent. And same thing, still didn't really think about it. I come to New York, do my press conference, same thing. And then I did my last charity basketball game in Detroit, and I'm doing an interview, and it kind of like started to hit me a little bit like, oh, snap, this is it. And I think part of it was the support that I had in Detroit. I mean, I'm selling out a charity basketball game. The gym is packed. The celebs want to be there and be a part of it. So we have Michigan players like Desmond Howard. We have Lloyd Carr. I was this close to having all five of the Fab Five back
Wow.
for the first time at that point. We were waiting to see if Juwan Howard still was going to sign because he was still a question mark.
Yeah.
I think Weber said he was going to if they could. We had Jackson and King, and who was the fifth one?
Jalen.
And Jalen, yeah. So Jalen was there, and Jackson was there. So like it was almost about to happen. Then Kid Rock is there.
Mm-hmm.
He makes a free throw at the end that ends up on TMZ. I got Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn. I mean, I look back on it, I go like, wow, like we were able to put that together. They wanted to be there. They enjoyed, and the fans and the cities loved it. And I said, that's one thing that about Michigan that you don't get outside of Michigan. Like Michigan people love Michigan.
Yeah.
And that's why all those people came and they wanted to see it and were a part of it. And I knew that that chapter was going to be done for me. And I think it all hit me at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean it's always a whirlwind, and it's one of those things that as a fan, it's it's almost like characters in a play. Oh, God, pieces on a chessboard being moved around. It's like, no, this is this real impact on people's lives, and you had been. I think anyone that was an integral part of that '06 team, people had a real like connection to, just because they felt like they kind of ushered in this new age of Tiger baseball. And you bring it up with Detroit and with Michigan, it's such a communal experience. And for the people who are listening right now, we might not remember, but like I think, and I could be wrong about this, I think when Michigan made it to the national championship in basketball in 2013. I think that was the first time in like decades that the Fab Five had been in the same building together. So you were as close as anyone to getting them all together on that particular night. So credit to you. One thing, we had Matthew Boyd on last week, and when he was acquired by the Tigers, he was a part of the David Price deal in 2015. And I asked him a question similar to what I'm about to ask you right now, because included in the trade package with you, Max Scherzer goes to Detroit. Now, you also had Austin Jackson and Phil Koch. I mean, guys that were key pieces of the organization. But Scherzer, still going, at 40, three-time Cy Young winner, first ballot Hall of Famer. Do you come away from that in hindsight with a sense of pride, being like, man, I must have been pretty good if I got traded for a guy that's got 3 Cy Youngs in his back pocket right now, or do you just kind of view it as part of the business?
I viewed it as most of the players that got traded in that were still around like 10 years after the fact. So, like you said, Scherzer obviously still doing it. Edwin Jackson, finished his last year, I think, in 21 or 22.
Yeah.
Like I said, Austin Jackson, Phil Koch, Ian Kennedy was also in the trade. Right? Like, so we had guys that moved, and, typically it's like a name for prospects that end up being game. But everyone was roughly established to some extent or about to make a name. Like Austin Jackson was coming. Phil Koch was coming. So it was so crazy to think about it. And Edwin Jackson, who him and I still stay in touch consistently. We just talked about that '09 team We lose on game 163, and if we go to the playoffs, we get the Yankees again. What could have been? It would have been Edwin Jackson versus CC Sabathia in game 1 of the ALDS, which would have been exciting. Plus, we were good. And I talked to CC. CC's like, we didn't want to play you all. They wanted to play the Twins. And if you look at their record, I mean, they dominate the Twins come playoffs. So we were excited. And obviously, game 163, I always tell everybody it's the craziest, wildest, most exciting game I've ever been a part of. Unfortunately, we lost, but like anything that could have happened did happen in that game. And there was one point where there was a pitching change made, and I'm in the outfield, and I normally stand with like my glove on my hip, just resting. And I could feel the bass from the crowd and the speakers in my glove, and I've never had that before, and I've never had it since. But it was that moment, partly because, same thing, kind of taking us back a little history here. We're supposed to play on Monday because the regular season finishes on Sunday. But Monday is Brett Favre now with the Vikings playing the Packers on Monday night. So they bump us to Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And when they do the football games, obviously there's more seats in the Metrodome. Well, they left those seats there. Well, a good amount of them as they could. So now instead of it being, say, 30 or 35,000, it's like 40 or 45,000 in there. So there's more people in there. Yeah, so we're at a place called Seven in Minneapolis. It's a restaurant. We had been there multiple times. And it's Marcus Timms, Edwin Jackson, myself. And we're just eating, doing what we're doing. The host or manager comes over. Hey, good luck tomorrow. It should be a fun, exciting game. And I think we're watching the Monday night game. Now it's on TV. Like 15 minutes later, they come to the table with a bottle of Grey Goose vodka, mixers, all this stuff. Hey, this is on us. And I was like, thanks, but we can't do that. We're playing in less than 24 hours, so we can't do that. So then we end up playing the next day. Wild, crazy game. Unfortunately, we end up losing. But then the trades happen, right? So not only did I get traded in that trade, Edwin Jackson gets traded. And Edwin and I both say this. If you think about it, we were both all-stars that year.
Right.
And we got traded, and then the team kind of got dismantled. Marcus Timms was no longer with that team. I think Polanco moved out eventually. But credit to Dave Dombrowski, one of the best GMs ever. Not only does he somewhat break the team up, but then puts together another team that ends up going back to the World Series soon after that. So it was always interesting that trade went down like it did, and the number of players that played for as long as we did at the level we did for the teams that we did. I think it's one of the most interesting / impactful trades in baseball.
Yeah, I would say it's one of the biggest win-win. You could probably technically say win-win-win with the three teams involved in it, because Kennedy was really good there for a minute in Arizona in terms of what each team got exactly what they wanted from the guys that they acquired. You brought it up a minute ago, but the Metrodome there in Minneapolis was kind of the last of its kind in many ways, and was so, House of Horrors for us multiple times, even going back to the 80s playing there, but just how difficult was that outfield? I can't really call it grass. Just outfield surface there playing in the Metrodome, and how unpredictable that could be.
So the surface actually wasn't too bad. It was just the dome. If you had a day game, and always, Saturdays, Sundays, or for sure, I feel like we were always there on a weekend.
Yeah.
And Sundays were always a day game. So, if it's right outside, then that baggie is a little bit wider. And there's parts where there's no problem at all. And there's true blind spots. It's like, all right, I don't know. And I think we had someone drop the ball in game 163 there.
Yeah,
or not drop, but miss. Couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But, it went back and forth, back and forth. So that was the only real challenge of the place. It wasn't drastically different because there were other stadiums that were similar to this, where you shared a batting cage. You had your time when you had to go hit. And at that point, I wasn't much of a pinch hitter. I either started or I didn't play. So it didn't affect me. Where like, hey, I didn't start the game. It's the 5th, 6th inning. I got to go get loose. So that didn't affect me. But Wrigley was like that. Fenway was still like that. I think even Yankee Stadium to some extent, Dodger Stadium. Like, you had all these stadiums where you shared a batting cage. Right. Oakland was like that. So it wasn't uncommon. But now looking back at, wow, like we had to share a cage. Or if you needed to get loose, you had to find a way to do it in the locker room. Baltimore was like that. You had to share a cage. So it wasn't drastically different. And the great thing that I always loved about places that had a dome is you knew you were going to play. So as much as people didn't like Tampa and didn't like Minnesota,
Good point. Yeah.
I hated rain delays. I did not
Yeah.
like a rain delay. I was just like, if we can start on time, then let's start on time. And if we start playing, let's keep playing. Like, and you get the elements kind of neutral. But Johan Santana was amazing in the
Yeah.
Metrodome. So you didn't want to face him. Another story about that. He was tipping his pitches one time against us, and Gene Lamont at third could see it. He was relaying the signs, or somehow they were getting the signs to the hitters. So we knew every pitch that was coming, and we still had like 12 or 13 strikeouts.
Yeah.
So
No, he
he
was
was
that good.
that good
Yeah.
at point in time. So you didn't want to face him.
Yeah. No, I fell off the Hall of Fame ballot first time around. I talk about a guy who deserves a second look because of how short window, but how good he was with that changeup, especially at home. One of the best of his generation, 2-time Cy Young winner. So you get traded to the Yankees, and then the home run numbers start to go up. You're in the new Yankee Stadium. You hit 40 a couple times in a season, and I guess you brought it up earlier where, and there's a lot of guys that are like this that have power but don't necessarily consider themselves power hitters. Does psychologically your approach to at-bats change when you're in a place in which 40 home runs for you is more possible than it was, say playing at Comerica?
Not necessarily, because people forget my last year with Detroit, I hit 30.
Good point.
So I hit 30 in Comerica, and everyone goes, well, what happened? I go, well, all of a sudden right field is 20, 30 feet shorter.
Right.
So it's not like I was hitting the ball any further.
Yeah.
It's just that I got rewarded for the stadium metrics. And obviously, as you start to do that, then obviously your confidence would move up a little bit. But even if you look at my splits, it wasn't like I hit all 40 in Yankee Stadium.
Right.
One change was made. Kevin Long and I, my hitting coach with the Yankees, said, hey, let's get on top of the plate. Let's dare them to throw inside. So that way anything you do hit is going to be to the pull side. But we have to teach you how to pull correctly. So Robinson Cano was on the team, and he used to do this drill called the net drill, where you take the net and put it in front of you if you're hitting. So as you're swinging the bat this way, hopefully you don't hit the net. And it makes the ball flight true. That way you don't hook balls. And they're not those foul balls that a lot of pull or people that are trying to pull do. So learning how to pull the right way got the backspin, got the lift, and got the rewards in places like Yankee Stadium. And that's basically the only change that happened. But the funny part about it, someone goes, well, what happened to all the triples? I go, again, just look at the makeup of the stadium.
Yeah.
There's really no foul territory there at Yankee Stadium on the right field side. That's where a lot of my triples came in Comerica, or places like Texas, the old ballpark at Arlington. I remember I had 2 in a game and stuff like that. And then even the gaps, right center gap is so much smaller. I mean, that thing's got to bounce around a little bit over there in Yankee Stadium, whereas in Comerica, that's one of the deepest parts of the field. So those types of things, just if you overlay where I hit balls in both places, the numbers might start to look about the same if you just switched them,
Yeah, no, and that's all true, and that's a really interesting breakdown. And say it's some of your better power years came there, incredible lineups in New York, and you find a ton of success there. And we kind of cross paths, us Tiger fans cross paths with you again because you were kind of the last line of defense in potentially stopping Miguel Cabrera's Triple Crown campaign in 2012. Obviously, Miggy, wins the first of his 2 MVPs that year, but it was the last day of the season. You ended up finishing 1 home run behind him. He ends up getting taken out in Kansas City, gets the standing ovation. During a season, you guys, you ended up playing each other in playoffs that year, but how cognizant are you of the possibility of, or do you try not to overthink it to a certain extent and get in your own head, but are you aware of the fact that if I hit a few more, all of a sudden I'm in the lead and I might be, getting in the way of history, so to speak?
Not necessarily the history, because I think in 11 and 12, I finished second in home runs. I lost to Batista the 1 year and Miguel. So I was like, man, if I could kind of get ahead and just, be that, considering, again, I'm not a home run guy, but to do that, that would have been cool. And the last Yankee game of the season, I'm 1 homer short.
Yeah.
And when I did what I did, again, I had no idea where Miggy was in that spot at this time.
Right.
So we had a young player, I'm trying to draw a blank on his name. Can't think of his name at the time. But he was a September call-up. And we're winning the last game of the season. So Girardi comes to me and goes, "Hey, do you want this last at bat?" And I said, "No, give it to him. Like, he's up. Give it to him." So I remember a lot of Tiger fans going, "Oh, look what Granny did. He sat down to let Miggy win the Triple Crown." I wasn't thinking about that when I made the decision. I was trying to help this young player get an at bat. I'm glad people took it that way. But yeah, I was trying to get this young player an at bat because I know he didn't get, or who knows what his chances were going to be at this point to extend his career. So get your at bat right now. And then sure enough, obviously Miggy did it. But even if I take that bat and I homer, now we're tied.
Right.
So unless the game continued or something like that, I think he still wins it, right?
Dude, you know what? Knowing what I know about baseball historians, this would be a very hotly contested thing. I promise. This would be something that would still be talked about. I mean, yes. Like, it's something that we hadn't seen in decades. Yeah, he won the trip. They tied for home runs. Big deal. There would be people, I'm telling you, who would be hammering home the idea of, like, it's got to do it individually, got to be above everybody else with no ties. I'm really not sure, but that is a good, there's an interesting perspective on it. Was it Melky Mesa, the young player that?
That's it, Melky Mesa. Yeah,
I looked at the Baseball Reference page for the final game, and he had 15 career at bats. So yeah, you did him a favor. No, that's interesting. That's
right. You know,
but you have the rare distinction of having played for both New York teams, and it's very interesting because obviously in the same city, but the perception or viewpoint of both organizations, especially at the time in which you played for them, was very different. Did you, in terms of fan reaction, and I'd even say you brought up earlier kind of the publicized nature of playing for the Yankees, is there a big variance between just your comfortability in the Bronx versus how you felt in Queens, or do you feel like it's a little bit overblown?
So when I get to the Yankees, again, I mentioned those pressures about just New York in general, those stories I had heard. Where am I going to live? How to move around? Coming in as an opponent, you're in the hotel and the bus is probably taking you to and from. And I had made friends there, playing there. Some of my friends had moved there. So I knew places to go. But again, it was kind of like, all right, hop in a taxi, go here, go there. The bus was taking me to and from the stadium. And this is something underrated that a lot of people don't realize. You just assume that once you join a team or get called up, you know how to get into the stadium, you know where to go, you know where the locker room is, you know where all that stuff is. But you don't. You have to figure that stuff out. So case in point, even in 2004, when I get called up to the Tigers from Erie, it's Roberto Navoa, myself, Ryan Rayburn, and Max St. Pierre, and we're all headed up that way. And the only person who had been to the big leagues at that time was Roberto Navoa, and his English wasn't the best. So as we missed our flight because our game ended late, and we get packed, and you got to get up there, and we just kind of overslept and missed our flight. So now we're driving from Erie to Detroit, and once we get there, Roberto Navoa is telling us, "Okay, go here." Now he's the only one with a Major League Baseball ID. The three of us have our minor league ID. Yeah. So we pull up at the parking lot, and we're like, "Hey, we're here to play," and I'm sure people have tried to do that before,
Yeah.
So now we get in, and they call down. Yes, it's them. Let them in. We part. And again, he knew where to go. So if he wasn't there, we would have been walking around and trying to figure this thing out. So now fast forward. Now you're at Yankee Stadium. I get traded there. Again, I've come in on the opponent side. I know where all the opponent stuff is. I don't know where the home stuff is. I got to figure that stuff out for the first time. So all that stuff is transitioning in, trying to get situated. And they had just won the World Series in 2009. So I'm number 28 with Detroit. I come over to the Yankees. They ask me what number I want. Do you want 28 here? And Joe Girardi has 28 in hopes of winning the 28th championship. I said, I can't take that because if we lose, people are going to blame me.
Right.
So I revert and go get my high school number, which is also the same number my dad wore, which was 14. And play there. And then people go, well, how did the power and the pressure side of it? Very fortunate that roster and the names that were there. Mm-hmm. So you had the core four with Jeter, Pettit, Posada, and Rivera. You had A-Rod, you had Cano, you had Teixeira, you had the championship, you had Swisher, you had all these names. All I had to do was come in and just be me. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the lineup, another thing I think that helped me get 40 is Jeter's leading off. I'm batting second, and then after me, just pick your poison. Cano, Teixeira, A-Rod, and you go, okay, who do you want to pitch to in these lineups? The guy who, again, is not the power hitter and came from Detroit, or these guys that have 3, 4, 500 home runs. So they're just coming at me, and because they can't walk me, and I'm taking advantage of it. So that helped with that side of things. Now I become a free agent. Then I sign with the Mets. And I didn't know much about the Mets either because just with interleague, we only faced them in the Subway Series with the Yankees. And then the Mets came to us in Detroit in '07. So I had never been to Shea. So now Citi Field is there. And even for the Subway Series, you only focus on that series. And after that, it's focused on the American League East. Boston, Toronto, Tampa, Baltimore. We don't care what's happening over there unless we happen to face them again in the World Series, which didn't happen for either sides while I was there. So now I go there. It's like, okay, I know David Wright. I played against him in the minor leagues. I know some of these other guys. I don't really know a ton of people over there. Now I got to get to know them. I got to go to a new spring training site.
Yeah.
I got to go to this new place in Citi Field and get situated there. So there was the pressure on that side of it, but then it kind of smoothed and acclimated and got in. And I enjoyed both sides of them. And I have to say I said this to people, from a fan standpoint and a stadium standpoint, the loudest, if you want to hear the loudest boos, Citi Field. If you want to hear the loudest cheers, also Citi Field. I feel like they go both sides. And the reason being is I think the Yankees at that time, they had won so much.
Yeah.
They were coming off a World Series. They weren't going to get too high until it was time to go to the World Series. And they weren't going to get too low because they knew the team was going to be good. With the Mets, it was like, here we go again. And then if you flip, it's like, wow, this is amazing. We're enjoying it. So I say that to people and they go, oh, no, this, that, and the other. And then even if you just look at stadium attendance numbers, Citi Field is slightly smaller than Yankee Stadium, and it would just still do it. I mean, case in point, look at when we with the Mets played the Dodgers after the Chase Utley play.
Yeah.
Just even in intros, it was like, oh my God, this is insane. It was stuff like that I didn't get the same side on Yankees. Of course, it would get loud and get intense and be crazy. But on the Mets side, it was just slightly different in that aspect.
I'm trying to think of the timeline here, but I'm glad you mentioned the Utley series because it featured one of the great managerial ejections of all time with Terry after Noah Syndergaard threw it Utley. And I'm trying to remember when the audio leaked because I don't think it was a few.
Yeah, right?
It was a few years after it had all gone down. But we had Andy Dirks on a few weeks ago, and I asked him about the some famous Leland ejections. But after something like that, and I know you were probably in the outfield, so I don't know exactly, if you're aware totally of what Terry Collins said. But do you approach a manager after a game like that and be like, man, you really gave it to him? Or is that one of those things where it's like seeing your dad angry and it's like, let's not approach him right now. Like, let's give him some time to cool off.
You know what? I mean, they're mad in the moment. And I think once they get ejected or they're out, then they're done.
Yeah.
The only time you don't approach dad is when he's yelling at you,
Fair.
So if he had a team meeting and they started snapping on us. But Jim Leland was one of the best at doing it because he would snap on us for, a number of reasons, mostly lack of effort. That was the big thing. We showed lack of effort in whatever it is, whether it was preparation before the game, whether it was during the game, that's when he blew up. And everybody would get it. So if he didn't play, you're still getting yelled at too. So he was even, he didn't call anyone out. And when he would yell at everybody like that, at the end, he would leave and then he would come back and yell again. And then he would do that 2 or 3 times. And eventually everyone started laughing and he'd kind of let you go. Yeah. So then you okay, I can go talk to dad again. And Terry, didn't have the blowouts like that, but he had come up underneath Leland. So he would have it a little bit. And there wasn't okay, I'm afraid to go talk to him or any of the other managers I had. Because I felt one of the things they all did very well is it was warranted. There was never a situation where this didn't make any sense and now I'm questioning and now we got to figure this thing out. I feel like anytime they snapped on us, it was because it was warranted and it was deserving.
Yeah, and it was that those clips especially, and those veteran managers, they just get it. Like I remember somebody after the audio of the Terry Collins ejection leak, somebody was like, "Man, him and Tom Hallion probably just dapped each other up the next day like nothing happened." Like
Yeah.
that's just part of the game. I know a few more here because I was doing trying to do some research for this interview. I know you're a big Kansas basketball fan. And we have obviously a lot of Michigan and Michigan State people on, and I asked them this question, but this one, and this might take a second because we're talking Kansas here. I mean, the blue blood of all blue bloods. But if you had to give me your all-time starting five for Kansas Jayhawk basketball, now if you want to go positionless and just give me the five best, you can. If you want to go by position, you can do that as well. Starting five all-time Kansas basketball. Who are you having on that list?
So I had this jersey, and I tried to model my game after him at point guard, Jacques Vaughn.
Okay.
I felt like that was I was in my prime watching Kansas. I loved to be a facilitator, so he was my guy on that. Paul Pierce at small forward, I think I would probably put him
Put him at 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3. People forget Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah, you got to put him 5, yeah.
I got to put Wilt there. And then, let's see, my other two, probably Danny Manning
I was thinking you got
Howard.
Yeah.
And then my two then would be so you know what? I'll go Paul Pierce 2, and I'll go Rayford Friends 3.
Okay.
And put them there again. I just was following those teams, saw them a ton, and I think it was 08.
The Mario Chalmers year?
Was it that one? Was the Final Four or the Elite Eight in Detroit?
Yeah, I think it was
because
it was the Final Four was in Detroit in 09, but I think the game against Davidson, right? The Elite Eight game.
Yes, the game against Davidson. Yeah,
I think that was that was at Ford Field, I think. Yeah.
So that was a Sweet 16 matchup then. Right?
16 and Elite Eight. I think they were both in the same location.
So we got to go to that one, and I had my Kansas gear on, so I was excited for that one. And then obviously the Mario Chalmers year, I'm with the Yankees. And Jeter's a big Michigan fan.
Yeah.
And, I get a chance to see that one. So how I became a fan of them, I have no idea. I just remember certain points in my life where I was like able to sit and watch a whole game.
Yeah.
And that happened to be the game, whether it was a championship or a playoff game. I'm like, I like this team.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I became a Braves fan. That's how I became a Bills fan. That's how I became a Jayhawk fan. Why? How? I'm from Chicago. So that's how all those teams I became fans of.
Well, I mean, it's like we talk. It's like Michigan football too, where they're one of those teams. The Yankees are like this, where it's just you turn on the TV and it just feels like they're on all the time.
Yep.
The brand recognition is there. What could you have predicted watching that Davidson game in the Elite Eight that this scrawny kid from Davidson would change the NBA for the next 20 years?
Right?
Yeah.
I just remember watching that game being scared. I'm like, man, this dude's not missing. And I had seen some highlights prior to. I'm like, uh-oh. We can't lose this one here, especially since I got this Kansas gear on, and it's a close one, and it's going back and forth, and he's shooting it up. And I don't even know where I'd heard him being projected at that point in time. But, yeah, to go on and do that, I think it's a good message to young athletes in any sport, and you see it happen in a couple different ways. You may not be the person on paper or in the numbers that jumps off the charts, whether it's a height thing, a weight thing, a strength thing, a metrics thing. But if you can develop and put yourself in a situation and dominate that situation, it'll happen for you. Yeah. And I think that's the part that gets missed. People go, well, I didn't do this, that, and the other, or, this opportunity wasn't there. I go, but did you dominate it? Dominate your workouts, dominate your work ethic, and then when given the opportunity to play, dominate it. Like, that was how I was for me as a baseball player. I got out of high school, I was 165 pounds. Graduating high school, I was told I was too small. I ran a 7.4 60. Everyone said I was too slow to play center field, and I didn't hit for enough power to play the corner. So I didn't get drafted out of high school. Yeah. And all my offers were mid-major D1s in the state of Illinois. So I ended up going to UIC. I work out hard. I gained 20 pounds of muscle. I start to play well. And my sophomore summer going into my junior year, I go to the Northwoods League, dominate there, make the all-star team. And then my junior year, I finished second in all Division I in batting average. Like You got to put yourself in a space, and Steph Curry dominated in that space to get himself an opportunity. And once he's gotten the league and started to play, he's been a dominant force. So it's not an easy thing to do, but if you can do those things, you get a chance to sense that. Even case in point, the young player that just got called up by the Rays, the fast one.
Simpson.
Sims, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. Guy went to a small D1 out of college, transferred to Georgia Tech, dominated there, finally got drafted, dominated the minor leagues, and now he's in the big leagues. Like, if you dominate where you're at, it's going to happen for you. And then the metrics and stuff start to happen. So it may not happen for you today. And for me, people ask me, when did you think you would have a chance to get drafted or get to the big leagues? I said, it was my junior year of college. Like, I got letters and stuff in high school, but I knew I wasn't the fastest on time. I could play fast, but I wasn't the fastest on time. I hit 3 homers, I think, my high school year. But I could play. So I still had some developing and things to do, and that's what I was able to do. And I think a lot of other players can do the same thing.
That's why I love reading scouting reports or pre-draft reports that were wrong and just how funny they are in hindsight. Like, it was like that with Steph, but I remember there was a famous one a few years ago. It was Nolan Arenado's scouting report at third when he was in the minor leagues. Talk about, like, this guy's flat-footed. He's not going to be able to, handle the hot corner. He's got 10 gold gloves in his back pocket now. It's just those type of things you can try to, assess what things are going to look like long-term, but God puts in the effort. You never know. Now, you've had a really interesting role here in baseball as you've kind of been traveling all over the world here as an ambassador for the game. And I was just checking the countries that you've been to, just to name a few here: England, Italy, Netherlands, France, South Africa, China, New Zealand, South Korea, Japan. Which one of those nations, in your experience, has the best food?
We're going best food out of all of those places.
And if there's one I didn't name, you're welcome to go with that one as well. But just of the
best food, hands down out of all those, has to be Japan.
Really?
And everyone thinks, oh man, it's just sushi. Like, no, some of the best fried chicken I've ever had there. Some of the best Italian food there. I think they pride themselves just on perfection, and it's amazing. Korea, though, I think trumps them on the fried chicken, but Japan had overall the best of everything there. New Zealand, it felt very much like home. Things I wanted to get here, I could get there, but except a lot of lamb, some of the best lamb, because they have, I think, more sheep than people over there. So, and then obviously some of the other places just so unique and exciting. And I love food, so I'm going to go. I'm going to try things. I went to Taiwan. I had snake's blood. I'm surprised I'm still standing because I witnessed them kill the snake, drain the snake, and then we drank it. And I go, what are we doing? And I'm still standing here. So, but yeah, I loved getting a chance to go to all these places. And it's all thanks to baseball, to meet these great people, to eat these great food. And one thing which I'm surprised hasn't got more hype. In 2008, I go to South Africa. Mm-hmm. I meet this young player in the midst of a lot of other players. And fast forward 2018, him and I are on the same team with the Blue Jays. And that's Gift and Gope.
Okay.
And I'm like, how does no one mention this as much? He's the first South African born player to make it to the big leagues. And then him and I end up being teammates for a brief moment with the Blue Jays.
Small world, man. No, that's really, we had Ben Verlander on a while back, and he had a whole trip to Japan, and we talked about it a little bit. But what's their ballpark food situation like? Like, how different
ballpark food?
Yeah, how different is it compared to what we get in the United States?
So that's one thing. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to go to a stadium there, but I've seen it on social, and I just think the environment and all the things I've heard about it just make the game that much more interesting. They have sections that sit you close where you get helmets and gloves. So that way, this is before the nets went down the line. You have the noise. I think each player has their own chant that they come up with, chant or song form. And then from a food standpoint, again, I just think the way the Japanese culture does food, anything I've seen on social is probably accurate. And anything that you get there is going to be like, wow, how come we haven't thought of this? This is so simple, but yet so amazing. There. So that's still one of the things. I don't know how or why. I think every time I've been there, the season either has just been wrapping up or we didn't get a chance to go to an actual game there.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. I had a friend of mine who was running in the Japan Marathon and actually went to a few WBC games there and said it was pretty wild at the time. But all right, 2 more for you. This one, I'm going to give you 4 former teammates of yours, and I want you to tell me which of them you would least want to face in the box.
All right.
Justin Verlander, CC Sabathia, Jacob deGrom, and Clayton Kershaw. Now, I'm going to say all 4 of these guys, when you're facing them, at their peak, at the height of their power. So it's not necessarily when you played for them. It's when they were at their best, winning Cy Youngs, pitching 200 innings a year. Who's the one you'd least like to face?
So this one, I remember getting to first base, and Joey Votto said something to me, and he said, "You know what's so great about playing in New York?" And I thought he was going to talk about the food or the city or something. He goes, "You don't have to face this pitching staff." And at that time, that pitching staff was Syndergaard, DeGrom, Harvey, Matz, and I was like, okay, like they're like I play behind them, and I can't tell how good people are being 200 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
But then the at bats I had against DeGrom, I was like, whoa. Like his ball kind of like rides. He throws a really solid backdoor cutter that's like hard to you give up on it and it comes back. And he pitches just up. He's one of the first guys that I saw that was able to pitch up at the zone effectively. Most guys prior to that would go up and miss for purpose to come back with something else. He was going up there with a reason. And I don't have a ton of at bats against DeGrom, but his were the ones I was like, man, like I just couldn't pick him up, so I didn't like facing him. I know my numbers aren't great against CC either, but I felt like I had a better shot, if that makes any sense, because I know, again, my numbers aren't great against CC. But definitely DeGrom is the one I didn't like facing.
Yeah, and you hit Verlander. I mean, you had over 1,000 OPS against Verlander. So I put you in the Billy Butler category of guys that just owned Justin Verlander for most of their career. But now that's because I think the years you faced DeGrom was when you were in the East with the Marlins. So that was right when he had won the Cy Young with the Mets, and then was coming back and won another one the next year. And I think in the early part of that season in 19, he had like a 14 strikeout game against you guys, I think in Miami, where he was just dominant. Yeah, no, I'm looking at the 4 for 24 against CC, against Kershaw here. Yeah, it's 3 for 17, which honestly, compared to given where Kershaw was for about the 8-year stretch there, honestly isn't that bad with the way he was rolling. Last question for you, man, and I brought it up earlier, but like it's the staying power that you've had as a player in baseball and as a personality in baseball, I think is really remarkable. And I mean, I don't know how much you feed into this stuff or listen to it, but like you are as beloved a player as there's been in Major League Baseball in the last like couple decades. Honestly, I mean, it was you haven't played in Detroit in 16 years, and there's people were amped when I said that I'm going to have the opportunity to interview you, and I remember there was the video of when you got traded from the Mets, like the reaction to that, and I think it was Syndergaard was crawling on your leg, begging you not to go and everything. Like I guess just on a human level, you gave so much to this game, but do you ever have the opportunity to kind of take a step back and feel like you did things the right way, both as a player and as a person?
I think I looked at it as I never thought I would play as long as I did, or even make it to the big leagues. And this is God's honest truth. When I got drafted, I thought I was going to play for a couple years in the minor leagues, get released, and then go put my degree to work. Wow. And that was where I thought it was going to be. And sure enough, I played well in my first season. Second season, I make the All-Star team in the Florida State League. And I actually thought about quitting at the end of that season. Wow. I was like, man, I got all my friends and family in Chicago. They're living in life and doing all these great things. And here I am in Lakeland, Florida. And there's no fans, and it's hot, and it's miserable. And I'm staying in this dorm, and there's roaches and rats and ants. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And sure enough, the next year I get called up to the big leagues. So I was that close to quitting, and 1 year later I'm up in the big leagues. Now I'm finally up in the big leagues, can establish and stay. And I think always having that thought, like never that, okay, I'm bigger or better than the game or better than the people that support this game, has always been in me. And I think that comes from my parents. They were educators, and they had a diverse group of students that they taught and peers they worked with, and everybody they treated exactly the same. And I just tried to model myself after that. Like my job title was different, but it was no better than anybody else's. And I was fortunate enough again to start my first full year with Jim Leland.
Yeah.
Because at that time, Detroit's economy was struggling. And I remember Leland addressing us and going, hey, don't forget when you go out and about in this town, in this city, around this state, there are people struggling. And for 3 hours a day, you're their motivation, excitement, just a way to get away from it. Just don't forget that side of it. And that always stuck with me. So when given opportunity to, communicate, interact, talk to, and be supported by the fans, it was always there. And that started in Detroit and continued to go. Now, of course, there's times you're tired and you're fatigued, or, some people cross the line a little too much, but a majority of it was always great. And I felt, reciprocal in terms of, hey, how they treated me and how I'm going to treat them. And I think that's allowed me an opportunity to remain in this space. Like, I didn't play great in every city I played in. I didn't play great for every team, but I think people value the fact that I showed up, I played hard and gave you what I could. And I think that part is respected, especially in the cities that I did play in, that really value just showing up and playing hard. And I think across the board, that's given me an opportunity to have just longevity. And it wasn't by design. It's just the nature of who I was and how I was brought up.
Yeah, well, absolutely, man. And it's, I think one of the great things that you can say about any career is like, was baseball better with this person? And baseball, you made baseball better as Curtis Granderson.
Thank you.
So, I mean, as a Tiger fan, just thank you. I mean, honestly, they just were. You heard me, rambling on about it earlier. These are core memories, and obviously we associate you with a pretty special time. So, thank you very much. After I hit stop recording here, if you could stay on just for a second to let your recording upload, I'd really appreciate that. But cool. Besides that, thanks again, and fans are going to load this one. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we can have you on again at some point in the future.
Awesome, sounds good. Thanks for having me. Of
course, man, that was great. I thought it was great. I thought that was so cool. I expected it would be. I mean, I've never seen really like an interview with Curtis Granderson that lacked like thoughtfulness or insight. That's one of those ones, and I'm not. Look, we're lucky to get all the people that we have on this show, but that was one of those ones where you just kind of toss the question out there and let them go. Unbelievable storyteller. I think Tiger fans are really going to connect and love that one. And that, yeah, I mean, these are things that are very important to me and moments that I really do cherish. It's very cool to have the opportunity to talk to somebody like that and hear those stories. I think Tiger fans are really going to dig this one. So very humbling for him to agree. I got to give a shout out to Austin, man. He's the one who helped get this one. So we've been trading blows back and forth about who's been getting guests. He definitely wins this round, and I'm happy to have him win this round. He's been doing a killer job. You can follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014. You can find this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube as well. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get those watch hours up. Keep hammering what we're doing because we're putting out good stuff and we're working really hard, and we get the opportunity to interview really cool people like Curtis Granderson. This is one of my favorite ones we've done, and I haven't gone back and rewatched it yet or listened to it, but he was on his game, and I thought I was on my game as well. I mean, thank you very much, Baseball Reference, for making me look very smart during that interview. Because I'll be honest with you, a little spoiler alert: I didn't really know who Melky Mesa was before I was looking at that page, but I knew where to look, and that's step one. So, yeah, you guys are the best. I feel very humbled by this. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy this interview as well. Have a great rest of your day. Peace and happiness.
We're all behind our baseball team. Go get 'em, Tiger. World Series bound and picking up steam.